we want to take you back to the Vatican, where after at least 4 rounds of voting, we have a historic choice for the next leader of the Catholic Church. Pope Leo XIV is the first American-born pope to ever be elected. The 69-year-old was born in Chicago and spent much of his time serving in Peru. I want to bring in Anthea Butler. She is a historian, professor, and chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Anthea, thank you so much for being with us. What do you think are the circumstances in the church today that led to this historic election?
You know, I think this is the Francis effect because this is such an amazing choice, first of all. And I have to say that I was wrong. I didn't think there would ever be an American choice. But if there was going to be an American that would be Pope, this is the person. Cardinal Prevost and now, Pope Leo XIV is going to be amazing, not just because of who he is, but because he's not just someone who basically hasn't done anything. He's been in Peru. He's worked with the poor. He's an Augustinian. He will be excellent for the church. And, I have to just say and admit here that I'm just amazed that a pope came out of Chicago because this is such a Catholic city. And to have the first American pope come out of Chicago, I think is an amazing, amazing story.
I don't want to focus too much on the doubts of why so many thought there couldn't be an American, but why were you thinking that going into this conclave?
Well, I was thinking it in part because America is sort of seen as this, actually a missionary enterprise by the church in one way. So this is kind of history about America, is that the American church has always been seen as the evangelization spot. It's not, something that is part of the church like Europe or Italy or something like that. We're the missionary. We're not an old country. That's number one. Number two is that I think the political part of this is really important to think about, because if you have an American pope, then somehow if we think back to maybe 19th or even 18th century, Catholics were looked upon as suspicion in America. I live in Philadelphia right now, and I need to tell you that there were Catholics and Protestants fighting in the street. So, we have all kinds of bad cartoons from the 19th century about Catholics and being afraid when, that the Pope would be the one that they would listen to instead of the president. We can think about this in elections, basically with JFK, being the first Catholic president, then Biden. And so to have an American Pope, this is very different. And I think this is going to set the American church in a sort of different kind of mindset. And I dare say, and I want to say this because I think it's really important, the kind of battles that we've seen about culture wars and things like this in the Catholic Church between traditionalists and liberals are going to be very interesting now that we have an American Pope.
And that will be a space to watch, certainly. I have about a minute left with you, and I want to just ask you to take us back to that moment when the white smoke was billowing out. You were there, you saw it. It's an experience that few get to have.
It was amazing because I was just shocked because I was standing here waiting for my time to come to do this. And I looked and I said, it's white, it's white. I could not believe it. I really thought it was going to be tomorrow. But what I think about this coming out today is that there was a consensus early on that already started to brew. And so, you have to think about it. There was 1 vote last night, 2 this morning, and then 2 this evening. So he came in probably, I think, the 5th vote. So this is really important because that means that at least 2/3 plus 1 got behind him. And so that means that he had the Cardinals were confident in him, and they like him as the next pope. And I think he's going to be a good pope. I really do.
Anthea Butler, we are grateful to you. Thank you. Let's bring back CBS News papal contributor Candida Moss with me in Studio 57, also an Edward Cadbury professor of theology at the University of Birmingham in the UK. And we've had a couple of conversations since you and I have spoken. I'm just wondering if you wanted to pull on any threads that we've been discussing or any reaction you have to anything we've been talking about.
I think what really strikes me is how he really pulls together so many things people were looking for. We talk about progressive Catholics, we talk about conservative Catholics, and when we think about Pope Leo XIV and what he has stood for, he is an Augustinian who embraces poverty and missionary activity. He was a pastor in Peru. He has leadership experience, and he's done that for the last few years. And he is an intellectual. He has a doctorate in canon law. He's named himself after one of the great doctors of the church. So he combines so many of the things that people were looking for. He's certainly going to be a centrist. He's going to frustrate people on the right and the left. But that may be exactly what the Catholic Church needs right now.
And he has to wear So many different hats, figuratively speaking. I mean, you can't just be the leader of the church. You also have to be, as Nora was talking about, good with finances. There are so many administrative duties. Almost a good politician. You have to be able to be a good communicator. Can you talk about the gravity of this role that has been bestowed upon him?
He's not just a spiritual leader. He is also a political leader. He is like a CEO of this global company. And he's someone who has to get involved in political affairs and has done in the past. He is going to be a global voice for the church, and he's a very intelligent man. He speaks 5 languages. He will be able to communicate with the majority of Catholics around the world. This is not a role that anyone takes on lightly, but we have to take sort of heart in the idea that he was elected by 2/3 plus 1 of the College of Cardinals. So in order to get here, he already has to be quite politically savvy.
We have about a minute left, but does it already start tonight? I mean, is today the first day of the rest of his life where he is expected to step into this on the first second of the job?
That's exactly right. It does start now, but we also might see a different man emerge at this point. People talk about how Francis was different before and after becoming Pope. And so he's going to find his feet and his voice. He was quite muted and restrained during Francis's papacy. And so we're going to see now the kind of Pope that he chooses to be. But what he won't give up, as we've already heard in his address, is his interest in missionary activity, is his pastoral tone, and in his care for people on the margins.
Candida Moss, thank you so much.